Land Cruiser or Land Rover? That is today's comparison test. These are two very old-school looking, old-school mechanical SUVs that have the 4x4 chops to go off-road in total comfort and total capability. But which one truly has the better tech? Which one truly is a better value? The results might surprise you, so let's get driving. The Defender and the Land Cruiser have legendary nameplates. A lot goes into them, particularly the four-wheel drive hardware and all of the capability. If you're just into the style, sure, these two will do in a pinch. But if you really want to off-road, you're gonna start with either of these two. But truly, one is really outclassing the other, and not by a small margin. The new Land Cruiser is styled more like the Land Cruiser from 30, 40 years ago. I like it. It looks so boxy, very unique. On here, round LED headlights because this is the 1958. That's what Toyota calls the base trim. If you order other Land Cruisers, they go square. They give it more of an FJ vibe from a newer generation. Either way, you're getting Toyota spelled out. You're getting boxy designs, lots of windows. It's the classic Toyota Land Cruiser look. Land Rover wasn't the only one that did this, folks. Toyota has been doing this for decades, and on this truck, it truly looks like it's ready for adventure. This one does have the optional skid plates. You have to order those as accessories. 18-inch tires. These are not all-terrains. Those are available. It's a very clean and classic look. It's gonna age well for a long, long time. And if you really don't like this one, well, you could get a Lexus GX, but you'd pay even more money. Queen Elizabeth drove a Land Rover that didn't look very different than this Defender. After all these years, this is the shape that everyone recognizes. The bold, upright nose with the circular headlights. Even the metal skid plates that aren't skid plates, they're supposed to be tread plates on the hood. They're plastic now, but that's an element that harkens back to original Land Rovers. Everything on here is functional. That's why the approach and departure angles are so good. And with the air suspension, they're way better than that of the Land Cruiser. If you look at these numbers, the Land Cruiser can't even compare. But even with the standard coil springs, this is the truck that's truly meant more for off-roading from the very start. You get all-terrain tires here for just a few extra $100 versus the all-seasons. These are 20s. You could go up to 22s if you're ordering the V8 models. And the biggest difference with the Defender isn't just the fact that it has a spare tire carrier out the back or that it looks super old, even older than the Land Cruiser. It's the fact that you can get it in 3 distinct body styles. This 4-door 110, the longer 4-door 130, or the short 2-door 90. The Land Cruiser has just 8 inches of ground clearance. That's less than a Subaru Forester. Other trims have 8.4 inches, but it's the Land Rover that really kills it. 8.5 inches on this air suspension model, 9 inches with the coil springs, and with the air, 11.5 inches. There's simply no comparison, especially when it comes to the approach, departure, and breakover angles. For size, the Rover is a little bit longer in the wheelbase, the width, and the height. But the length, the Land Cruiser is about 9 inches longer in total. So the Land Rover actually looks a little tidier than the Land Cruiser. Old is truly the theme here, and it's done especially well on the Land Rover. I think this is way more distinctive than the Land Cruiser. It's more distinctive than any other SUV. Why? It's the fenders, those auxiliary lights that are positioned to the side of the regular taillights. No other SUV does that. And it truly looks like it has basically old incandescent bulbs like the old Defender. It doesn't, of course. And the tailgate cracks open like a safe. Even how the rear defroster lines, they curve up and over like a bracket. No other SUV does things like that. And back here, you truly know that this is a Land Rover and nothing else. That truly is the point of having something unique. These SUVs might look old, but they pack very modern powertrains. On the Land Cruiser is a 2.4-liter turbo inline-4, but it is a hybrid with 2 electric motors. The numbers really good, over 320 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque, sent through an 8-speed automatic transmission. On the Land Rover, you can also get a 2-liter turbo inline-4, but this one has a turbo inline-6 with an electric supercharger. It's a 6-cylinder engine that's also a mild hybrid, almost 400 horsepower. And if you truly so desire, you can get a more powerful variant of that and 2 more V8 engines. Can't get any of that on the Land Cruiser. The Land Rover also has an 8-speed automatic transmission, but because the Land Cruiser is a hybrid, look at the fuel economy. It definitely bests the Land Rover, especially in the city. For towing though, there's only one champ. The Land Rover is towing nearly 8,000 pounds, 7,716 pounds to be exact, where the Land Cruiser can only do 6,000. In terms of hardware, they've both got it going on. Center and locking rear diffs come standard, as well as permanent four-wheel drive. The Land Cruiser is a turbo hybrid. And just if you thought that a four-cylinder engine was going to be slow in a vehicle this big, it's not at all. Toyota calls this iForce Max. There's a big Max gauge here. Not the HBO Max or Cinemax, but Toyota's iForce Max. And that means a turbocharged 4 with 2 electric motors. And like any Toyota hybrid, just seamless operation between gas, electric, and both. That's the only powertrain on the Land Cruiser, and it works. It works really well. Same setup as used in the Grand Highlander Hybrid Max, also the new Tacoma with this system. So we've seen it before. We've been testing these Toyotas. And on this big 5,000-pound Land Cruiser with permanent four-wheel drive, it's excellent, really is. Engine gets a little loud under heavy throttle, but even that really isn't all that bad. There's plenty of torque, 465 pound-feet of it, so it's pretty pleasant to drive. And these seats are comfortable. I'm not used to being in cloth seats, especially on a vehicle that costs 60 grand, but I rather like these. The thing I don't really like is that this door panel is such hard plastic. It's not padded like this center armrest, so kind of have to drive like this at all times, otherwise you're going to get, well, a very sore elbow. This Land Cruiser is really easy to drive on the road. The steering's just mildly wobbly, but it tracks pretty straight. Of course, these side view mirrors, just like the Defender, emit a ton of wind noise. So it's not a quiet vehicle, but neither is the Defender. These are very blocky shapes. And with that accessory cargo carrier that's on the roof, it makes it even louder. So, all expected. I'm not expecting this car to be anything like a Lexus. And the Lexus GX, well, it's not that much quieter. It's the same shape. The Land Cruiser has a lot of body roll when you push it into a corner, as to be expected. It's a softer coil-sprung suspension, high-riding SUV. So you have to drive the Land Cruiser like an older Land Cruiser, just like you have to drive that Land Rover like an older Land Rover. These two trucks are really unlike anything else in the modern SUV market, and that yes, they're brand new, but they truly act in many ways like trucks did 30 years ago. Both of them drive a heck of a lot better than a Jeep Wrangler or a Ford Bronco. So if you've driven those vehicles, you know exactly what I mean. Ride quality is good, not rough at all. And the torque fill with the electric motors and the turbocharger never feels like the engine is weak or wheezy in any way. The transmission programming also is good. There is a sport mode on this 8-speed automatic. You don't really need to do that though. But there's plenty of power for accelerating and towing. The Land Cruiser doesn't have any higher clearance than a Subaru Forester. The top trims have 8.4 inches. This is only 8. The Subaru is 8.7. So, not quite as capable off the line as I would expect a Land Cruiser to be. But a 2-range transfer case, low range, and this nice switch, that is what makes it not a RAV4 or a Highlander. Permanent 4-wheel drive with center and rear locking diffs as standard. Now it doesn't have, at least this model, any of the 360 cameras, especially that can show you the front. On the Defender, that really is a godsend when you're off-roading, especially by yourself, and just want to see what's ahead of you. The Land Cruiser, you just kind of have to get out and take a look yourself before crossing water or rocks, anything like that. But the ride is great. That same cushiness that you experience on the road, like anything, helps when you're off. And the Land Cruiser does not have the same ground clearance as a 4Runner, but it doesn't mean that you can't take it through the rough stuff. Toyota also has its crawl control. You've seen that on the Tacoma and the 4Runner. When you have it engaged, you use the drive mode select to go between multiple different settings, almost all the way to the full stop. You can adjust it here just with the dial. You don't have to touch the brakes or the accelerator pedal, nothing. Just does everything for you. You can think of it as an off-road cruise control, right? A lot of trucks have that now. Take this a little easier here. And Toyota also equipped this one with skid plates, which is very helpful because it's not standard equipment. All right, that was actually easier than expected. You can also easily disengage it. And say you're stopped, right? You don't want to use all the torque for first gear. You press this button, it's called ECT second. You get a second gear start. So you get a little smoother start off the line, especially when you're in 4 low, so you're not spinning the tires unnecessarily. That's really only useful when you really cannot afford to have the tires slip or sink further into a surface, such as mud. The Land Cruiser, just having really soft, long coil springs, makes driving off-road, well, it's really nice. The Land Rover might have air springs as an option, but with the coil springs, yeah, you get beat up a little bit, but not that badly. Just as you'd expect. It's comfortable, pretty predictable. And yeah, I honestly like driving it off-road, but truly, if it's gonna get any more difficult than what I just drove through, you're gonna wanna put this thing on a lift kit with some 35s on it. The Defender, with this turbocharged and electrically supercharged inline-6, well, it sounds a whole lot better. And it definitely moves a lot quicker. You might think this is unfair. It's got so much more power, more cylinders. No, it's not a hybrid, it's a mild hybrid, but still, why have this trim? Well, we couldn't get the base trim, which is the Turbo 4, which makes a little less horsepower than that Land Cruiser. So that would be more directly comparable. But in terms of price, this trim starts at just over 72 grand with the 6-cylinder. You can option up that Land Cruiser past 72. Not much more, but there's only one engine choice. So in terms of flexibility on the powertrains, the Defender is absolutely king here. And if you want to go absolutely crazy and spend almost double what this vehicle is, you can get not one but 2 V8 engines. It's kind of nuts. For the purposes of this comparison, for refinement, sound quality, and also just the power delivery, the Defender, I think, makes a stronger case. The only thing it doesn't have is a sport mode on this one. You can get it on the V8. You can watch my review. We did a 2-door 90 Carpathian edition V8. That thing was wild, but on the regular models like this, no sport mode. So the 8-speed automatic is a bit lazy to respond, whereas in the Land Cruiser, when you get on the throttle, you're met with a more immediate reaction, even though it's a much smaller engine. So this just takes a little bit longer to get on, but once you do, the surge just keeps going. The Defender is also quieter. On the highway, even with these all-terrain tires, it is quieter. There's more insulation here than the Land Cruiser, as you'd expect. And more padded surfaces. It's a more comfortable SUV to drive. Cornering is a bit flatter in the Defender versus the Land Cruiser, including when getting on the brakes. And there's noticeable pitch and dive, but it's definitely more controlled here. This Defender has the optional air suspension, so definitely part of that improvement is due to the air springs versus the standard coil spring setup. If you remove it, it's a $1,600 option as of right now. Truthfully, I think it makes this vehicle not only more comfortable on the road, but seriously extra capable off-road. It's absolutely insane. We'll see that in just a moment. On paved back roads, the Defender is very easy to drive, just like the Land Cruiser. Easy to place. The steering, it almost has, I would say, slightly more play than the Land Cruiser. I really don't know where these wheels are pointed at moderate corrections when you're turning the steering wheel. As you'd expect in a vehicle like this, it does not drive at all like the Range Rover Velar or the bigger Range Rover or even the Land Rover Discovery, for example. This is truly a retromobile, and it's, not as bad as the old Defender. But you can't drive this Land Rover just like the Land Cruiser. You can't drive them like the company's other vehicles. And that's a nice thing. It truly feels like something unique. You get in this, not only are you looking different, but you're driving differently too. And there's some authenticity there. Maybe some annoyances as well. I really wouldn't want to deal with steering like this on a daily basis. It's really just not my cup of tea. But what do I know? The British have been building this since the 70s, and this new model since 2020. They're selling very well. So both the Land Cruiser and the Land Rover have so much heritage behind them. That's ultimately part of the driving experience when you're thinking about that when you're behind the wheel. Without it, well, it just kind of feels like it wallows a bit and it rolls a bit. But ultimately, it's the Defender that feels plusher and more comfortable. And even if you remove a lot of the options, it's still the plusher and more comfortable SUV. When you get a Defender, you're getting some serious off-road technology. The front cameras, they will show you what's underneath the vehicle. I'll show you that in a moment. But to get to the off-road setting, press this button here. You got Land Rover's terrain response system. This is the original just point and click setup. You don't have to really do anything. It does everything for you. But I'm gonna put this into low range just because we're going down a hill and it's nice to have the truck do it for you. Sometimes you have to go a little forward to do that. There we go. Automatically raising me. And now we can just set off. Take off the hill descent control. Nice to have it, but in low range, don't really need it. I've driven Defenders plenty of times off-road, all sorts of Land Rovers. And every time, I'm just amazed at how easy it is. Not that Toyota's isn't. But here, there's just so much more capability and more systems working with you. And you've got so much more information at a glance. For example, if I want to go back and just see if the axles are locked, got these nice graphics here for altitude and pitch and roll. And you can see that too in the Land Cruiser. It's just on a much smaller display. Just like the Land Cruiser, the Defender is nice and narrow, so you can go through trails like this without having a gigantic truck. Off-road cameras like this, really nice, so you can see the edges of those tires. And then if you really want to see what you're driving over and about to drive over, this is nice, right? So if you're coming to an incline like this, I can get right on it. Boom, I can see exactly where that rock is. Now the next thing we'll do, we'll put on wading sensing. And ordinarily you don't really want to stop in water, but just to show you how this actually works. It has sensors that will actually show you the water line. See that? I really like that. It's giving you an estimate, but it's also trying to tell you what you shouldn't do. But you can drive with almost up to 3 feet of water on either side of you. So it's pretty impressive capability. And with the Defender, you can also order a factory air snorkel, so you can go just a tad bit higher. It is very impressive, and it's all available here on this touchscreen. For capability and comfort, it's really hard to beat a Defender. It truly is. You do pay more at the upper trims, but everything that you get standard, just like the Land Cruiser, delivers a lot of truck. And it's just so pleasurable to drive on any sort of trail. And the air suspension is just a really fun extra to have. But if you're getting a Defender, do you need it? No, you don't. But getting through some extra rough patches, definitely appreciated. I've been lucky enough to do this so many times in different Land Rovers. That's just fun. So if not for anything else, if you get a Defender for all the capability, you really should try it off-road. These big cloth seats remind me just like a Toyota was in the 80s and 90s. It even has the same fabric pattern. They're very comfortable too, and heated seats come standard on every Land Cruiser. The rest of the interior is very much back to basics. Now, considering that the Land Cruiser is $60,000, this one, you can also get a Defender 110 at the same price. And I think the cabin in even the base Defender 110 is fit and put together a little bit better. And by basic, I mean bone-hard plastic on the doors and on the lower console. But the dashboard is padded, and so is the center armrest, and there's a nice big chunky gear selector. The blank switch plates are kind of a throwback to options you couldn't afford. This is the base trim. But the fact that there's analog controls for the climate control, the drive mode selector, and the 4x4 controls means that the Land Cruiser is modern, but it's not really straying from its roots. The Defender has fake leather. They call it Resist. Resist what? The urge to buy real leather? Probably, but it does feel good. The seats are not quite as supportive as they are in the Land Cruiser, which you'll notice. A lot of rivet switches. This very much is a utilitarian vehicle, and it is not luxurious. Despite Land Rover saying there's 6 inches of extra front legroom at the max position, it doesn't really feel that way. The footwells are cramped, the center console is wide. The Land Cruiser to me felt a little bit roomier. But from behind the wheel, I do like the fact that I feel like I am in a more luxurious car, even though the idea of luxury, as I just said, it's kind of relative, right? Instead, think of the Defender's interior like expensive athletic wear. The stuff that you go to REI and all the other expensive stores and come out wondering, why did I pay this much? Well, why? It's because it's meant to last. Very durable materials on the seats, the doors, and the entire floor is entirely covered in rubber. It doesn't feel or look all that great, to be honest, but the fit and finish are very good. They're superior to that of the Land Cruiser, and I do like the exposed rivets and all the powder-coated metal on the steering wheel and the dashboard. And the way the screen is nicely integrated into that dash, I like the fact that it feels digital, but also, just like the Land Cruiser, nice and old. Basic also applies to the back seat. There is a third climate zone, but same hard plastic. Nice fabric seats, they're a little lumpy. Not like the front seats. And it's kind of hard to adjust this. This does recline, but really, there's not much happening back here, and truly, I was expecting a lot more room, especially because there's no panoramic moonroof. A nice rubber floor mats, it's very easy to clean. Now, when you sit back here, there's also more legroom, and there's footrests. They curve up on the floor, so it's just more comfortable. And with the panoramic moonroof, that is optional, and alpine lights, it's just airier back here. This is the vehicle you want to be adventuring in for a long time. This is my favorite feature on the Land Cruiser, the glass section that opens up. And if you don't want to access your cargo this way, you got 37 cubic feet the old-fashioned way. Now, when everything's folded, Toyota doesn't actually give you a real number, but it is very spacious. However, because this is a hybrid, the battery is mounted here, it does raise the cargo floor up a few inches, so you do get slightly less space. But there's also a 2400 watt AC outlet, and the Defender also has that, but there's more watts over here. Very few SUVs crack open like this. Very heavy, very durable. And when you go inside, 79 cubic feet of space with all the seats folded, 34 with the second row upright. And when you look inside the Defender 110, you'll see alpine lights on either side. Those are unique pieces of small glass that are on the roof that were designed when you drove this car in the Swiss Alps to be able to see over the corners. Don't really need to do that now, but they do look cool. The Land Cruiser has an 8-inch touchscreen as standard, Works pretty quickly, generally easy to use, but if you want this full bezel to be a screen of 12.3 inches, you have to pay extra for the higher trims. But there's no information in here that you really couldn't find elsewhere, really. This is not really exciting stuff. Climate control, a few vehicle customizations here and there, but truly everything else is inside the instrument panel. And on this base model, there's only a 6-speaker stereo, and it doesn't really sound good. This is the 7-inch instrument panel. It's significantly smaller than the full-width instrument panel than you'll find on the upper trims, but there's still a lot of customization to be had. All the meters here, this is what I like for turbo and the hybrid system. You can see that working. You can also see auxiliary gauges, your pitch and roll, change settings, see your audio, adaptive cruise control, and you can change some of the layout, but that's really all it does. Compared to everything the Defender has, this is very basic, and even the base Defender has a full-width instrument panel and a much larger infotainment system. So dollar for dollar, really, the Toyota system still looks a little too old. The Defender has a 10-inch screen that's nicely integrated into the dash, and this is the base screen. An 11.4-inch screen would cover all of this. I think it looks worse. This one is better. What I also like, the fact that everything works. As a Land Rover, I'm expecting things not to function. This system is truly better than Land Rovers of years past, and I really like all the graphics, how it works, and truly all the functionality. For example, say you just want to go through 3 feet of water. Well, you can do that and have everything show up here, including all of the 4x4 information directly on your screen. The Land Cruiser does not show any of that. They're really small and it's in the instrument panel. The Land Rover truly is meant to have everything up front and very, very clear. What I also like, well, energy impact, who cares about that? Because you're in a Defender. The rest of the settings, not very easy to use while you're driving, so it's best to do this while you're parked. But when you do so, lots of submenus, lots of explanations. I do like that. You will not have to use the owner's manual. You really shouldn't if you're just going around and trying to adjust everything. So this part is really excellent. And there's also some quick options here that you can do on the fly. Change your audio settings right here too. This one has a superior audio system. It's a Meridian sound system. Again, this one's more expensive, but even the base Defender has more features in it as standard. Love that. A digital instrument panel comes standard on the Defender, and what you can do with it, it's a lot better than the Land Cruiser. If you don't like 2 dials, you can use 1. Show the maps. You can show full screen maps. Things like this make a digital display truly worth the effort. Otherwise, why go through it, right? I love the fact that all the vehicle settings are also available here. Certain things that you wouldn't adjust in the touchscreen, for example. And it's also easier when you're switching drive modes that it also shows up here directly on the instrument panel in addition to the touchscreen. The Land Cruiser starts at $55,950. There are 3 trims. This is the base. It's the 1958. And with a few options and destination, $59,979. The Land Rover starts at $56,900 for the 2-door. The 4-door 110 is $60,800. And there are 6 trims. This is the X-Dynamic SE. And with destination and lots of options, $82,075. Now before you think this is not fair, a Land Cruiser can top $73,000. While a Defender S, the base, if you just add a few options, it's just over $66,000. The Land Cruiser is also about the same price when you order the mid-trims. And if you're going to get the X-Dynamic SE without the air suspension, without a lot of other options, you're cresting just over $74,000. So the Land Rover properly equipped is actually really priced well. It feels strange to say this out loud, but the Land Rover Defender is the better value here. It's more truck, better on-road refinement and comfort, better off-road capability, a lot more power, and it just truly offers a lot more customization. And if you're buying a specialty 4x4, that's what you really want. Now the Defender can truly get way too pricey in a hurry if you keep the options low and you keep them comparable with that Land Cruiser. For the same price, it's actually doing more. Now, down the line, 5 years from now, when the warranty on the Land Rover expires, that's probably going to be an entirely different conversation. Cost of ownership on a Toyota is historically low, and they're very reliable vehicles. So which one would you choose brand new? Let us know in the comments, watch the reviews online, and go to CarGurus.com where you can actually buy one of them. You know you want to. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.